Over decades past, the Oscars represented the best of filmmaking, back in a time when Best Picture really meant something. When Best Picture winner of 1976, Rocky, inspired generations of people to take that one chance to be great and to know that they are worth more than what they really think they are. When Braveheart made us remember how people have fought for their freedoms and what they believe in over time. When The Godfather showed us how dangerous it can be to get lured in even by family and lose your humanity in the process in search of power and greed. There was a time when the Oscars really carried some weight. That all died this year. Emilia Pérez has been nominated for 13 Academy Awards. Now, if you heard that, you would think that this has got to be the greatest film ever made, and no one can say anything bad about it. Everything I've heard from anybody who's not an Oscar baiting kind of guy or a critic says this movie actually sucks. And we know why this movie's being nominated the way it is. It's being nominated because it's about a Mexican transgender. That's why Emilia Pérez is being nominated for as many Academy Awards as it is. And the demographic that they're trying to pander to doesn't even like the movie. From everything I've been seeing, Mexicans find this offensive and say it's a really bad movie and pretty insulting. And the trans community is saying that it's a bad movie and pretty insulting because it wasn't made for the Mexican community or the trans community. It was made for the Oscars. This is Oscar bait at its finest. 𝐶𝐭 is another film that was nominated this year, and it's about finding a new pope, and plot twist, the pope ends up being intersex. This does not appeal to anybody in a real audience because it was made for the Oscars. It's like, hey, look at me, give me my trophy now. There was a time when it really meant something, when The Lord of the Rings: Return of the King swept the Oscars because it was the conclusion of this epic tale and amazing storytelling and great filmmaking where they go on these practical locations, but also groundbreaking CGI, fantastic performances, practical effects, and again, a conclusion to an epic tale of good versus evil. And that is why The Return of the King swept the Oscars that year. One of my favorite films of all time, Gladiator, was the story of the general who became a slave, the slave who became a gladiator, and the gladiator who defied an empire. To show that one man can stand for what is right, and everyone can be inspired by that one man standing for what is right. And it's so emotionally jarring that even at the end of the movie, when Maximus dies, we are happy for him. It's a happy ending because he finally gets to go home. That is what Best Picture is supposed to represent. In 1995, when Mel Gibson directed Braveheart, which I can't believe that dude just directed Flight Risk, but that's a whole other rant. And the story of William Wallace and the liberation of Scotland. And even if it's not historically accurate, it makes you believe something. It makes you feel, just like he says in the movie, I want to believe as he does. That movie made us think that we could believe in an ideal too. In Silence of the Lambs, the only horror adjacent film to ever win Best Picture, we see Clarice Starling, still a trainee, go toe to toe mentally with the most terrifying serial killer of the generation in Hannibal Lecter. And she doesn't back down in a room where the first thing that everyone says to her is how pretty she is and not acknowledging how smart she is. She's the one who finds Buffalo Bill. When she was being used, she shows how great she is, and it is still one of the greatest movies ever made. It's a thriller, it's fantastic, one of the greatest thrillers ever made. That's what the Oscars used to represent. Or of course, Best Picture winner for 1976, Rocky, when this underdog, this no-name, this loser, gets the opportunity of a lifetime, and he doesn't even win the fight, but he just wants to prove to himself that if he had one chance, just one chance, to do something great, that he could show everybody that he is more than the cards that he's been dealt. And that has inspired so many generations of people to say, if I had one chance, if I had one opportunity, what could I do with that? What would I do with that? And as Stallone said in his acceptance speech to all the Rockies out there in the world, chase your dreams, I love you. We watch the movie Rocky and we see ourselves in that movie. We see ourselves in the movie of The Lord of the Rings, and it's not because of their sexuality or anything like that. It's because of who they are as a character, and that's what represents it to us, and that's where we find our enjoyment in these characters and in these stories. Back when it meant something, and this is the year when the Oscars have officially died. Dune Part 2 should absolutely win Best Picture, and it has been nominated for only one Academy Award, and that is Best Picture, but I mean, come on, it's going up against Emilia Pérez. It's not gonna win. It's not gonna win. And I as a fan of film, as somebody who loves movies, and loves these stories and loves these characters. Like I said, it used to mean something. Saving Private Ryan was a Best Picture winner. And it's the best movie of that year. It absolutely was, man. We're talking about some of the greatest movies ever made. And, you know, Godfather Part 1 and 2. And it's just not that way anymore. It's just not that way anymore. And art is subjective. If you saw Emilia Pérez and you liked it, that's great. Good on you. But from what I've been hearing from everybody's like, objectively, this is a really bad movie. And yet it's nominated for 13 Academy Awards. It's just, because it wasn't even made for the Mexican community. It wasn't even made for the trans community. It was made for the Oscars. This is Oscar bait at its finest. And I hope the Oscars tank. I think we need a complete overhaul. Maybe even get a new awards in there, you know what I mean? And horror is neglected every year. That's why James and Chelsea and Dead Meat have to do the Dead Meat Horror Awards, because no one ever acknowledges that genre. You know, The Exorcist is still, look, objectively, it was nominated for Best Picture in '73 and it didn't win. I don't even know what won that year, but it probably should have been The Exorcist. So anyway, man, that's my rant, dude. The Oscars are over. I hope they tank. I hope this sucks. And yeah, Dune Part 2, absolutely the best movie of 2024. Twisters was cool too. So I love you. Jesus loves you. That's our story. We're sticking to it. See you guys.